Hey, hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So good to share space with you.
Thank you. Thank you for making this happen.
Oh, thank you for putting this together. It's always a good day to discuss, the impacts of climate change and everything. And so I'm just putting all this information on all the million groups that I'm part of in my DMs.
Wow. How was your day?
Good. How about yours?
Friday, finally. It was a bit quiet,
I,
so yeah, that's always good.
do you reside in what's it called? Do you reside in New York?
Yeah, I'm out here on Long Island. It's about 20 minutes away from Manhattan, from the city.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Do you have to commute every day to go in still, or do you just work from home?
I just work from home. I used to. I used to. It was like a 2 hour, 2.5 hours round trip every day.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore.
Oh. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you located?
Well, I'm located in Utah,
Okay.
so but I just have to say I'm a huge fan of Tanya Worsig. Got her art behind you.
Yeah, I was like, what the background? Be like, should I sit in my bedroom or should I have like something nice to look at in the background?
Love it. I mean, oh my goodness. I'm such a fan of her artwork. And so I just had to say, like, oh, wait, we got to pause for that artwork in the back because that artwork is fire.
Yeah, I love her. I'm such a fan. Just I can just go on her site and just stare at everything.
I know. I wish I had all the money in the world because I would just collect all her work, right? Isn't it her work just so amazing?
So great. You know, my cousin and I were like, "Oh, do you think you'd ever do something, with, people from like Papua New Guinea?" And I really liked her answer. She was like, "I really only do art after I've like gone to the place and I connect with the people and I learn about them." And I was like, oh,
That does make sense.
yeah, yeah. I was like, I respect.
So, yeah, you gotta respect, I mean, like the ability to just see people through your artwork and connect. And if you're not connecting to what you're doing, it's just not going to be your best work, I would
Yeah,
assume.
so true.
So I like I said, I have never had like transferred people from like IG to a Zoom account,
Oh,
so I
okay.
don't know what the show up will be.
No worries. I mean, I have my friends and my relatives that are like, yeah, we'll show up. Um, it doesn't bother me because in my activism, I've done, uh, presentations where like five people have shown up and it's fine. It makes it more intimate. And if you think about
Yes.
it, you're talking to five people who should go out and talk to five people and so on and so forth. Um,
But I love this idea of a Zoom regarding climate change because I know they do it so much in New Zealand,
yeah,
especially with, the Moana community out there, because it's just more, I guess there's more like representation. So
yeah,
that work is just more available and opportunities are available for people to join in that space.
definitely. I think, and it's more like for something for an issue like this, especially at this time, I felt it's more interactive. And I did make slides, but I thought it's more important that like we have a conversation and discussion so we can all hear from each other. We have two more people that joined. Yay, Essetta and Brandy. Hi, I'm Ilona.
Hi, I'm
Welcome.
Brandy. Hi.
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 Thank you for
I sorry, guys. Actually, my book's supposed to come today, I'm just, a lot's been going on, so I didn't get it. But I think when you guys start talking in depth about it, I'll just get off the call because I don't want to know. I have to read fast.
Oh, good.
Okay. This is just a reminder. Sorry, I put the information in the Pacific in our Moana book club of this Zoom, but this is for climate change. So there's, I don't know if you're referring to the Talanoa books. Sorry, we're reading.
Oh.
But this is for
Oh my
climate
God,
change.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're welcome to be here. You're totally welcome to be here. Talisa meetup is on Tuesdays, but I know, Ilona, I want to just tell you, I am in, like I said, I'm in so many groups.
Okay.
So, like, seriously, you can stay. It is going to be an amazing Zoom on top of what goes on in our Telesub in our virtual book. But we won't be offended, Brandy, if you don't stay. So come if you want to come, go if you want to go. But I just wanted to clarify, just so you don't think like, why are they talking about the book?
I'm like, wow, there's sorry, I'm bad connection. No, I'm sorry. There's a lot of messages in the group, and I wasn't reading good. Reading for comprehension, I suppose.
I know. I'm in so many groups. I'm like in a voting group. I'm in a like climate change group. I'm in a check-in on Pacifica Moana leaders. So I'm like posting this all over the place. And just in case nobody has nothing to do today, I mean, like, even if make it a plan to be here today. Anyways, I just threw it everywhere.
No, this is great. I love how you're so connected on so many different issues. This is cool.
I know. Eseta is actually in my part of our Moana book club. So thank you so much for joining in. Again, we will not be discussing Telesa tonight.
No worries. I came for the climate change discussion, so I'm really excited.
I'm excited to hear your perspective because Eseta, are you calling in from Australia or New Zealand?
I'm calling in from New Zealand. So it's Saturday morning here. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Okay. And I just remembered I had everybody's on different time zones, Ilona. So I'm like having to be like, it's now in case you, because when we say it's on Tuesday, they're like, oh, does that mean it's my Wednesday, your Tuesday? So it's like seriously going through like time zone check-ins and like, yeah. But you know, we always find a way to connect.
All good, all good. Yeah, my cousin said they're joining and they live in Papua New Guinea, so you know. But hey, you know, it's, you say you're gonna join at like 6, but you know, island time you'll join at like, I don't know, 6:30. But it's all good. Okay.
I think with these like big group meetings, like a lot of us think, oh, there's going to be so many people. So they don't, you know, they're like, okay, well, if I'm not there exactly at 6, I'll just sneak on in unnoticed.
Yeah, I do that sometimes in meetings.
No, I do that.
I was in a meeting the other day and I mean, yeah, it was like really important because they were discussing, you know, there's a whole bunch of like different climate and environmental organizations, and they're like, yeah, I mean, we're discussing, you know, what the path is to, you know, scenarios under Trump, you know, under Biden and Harris or Trump and Pence, and like everyone had their cameras off, and they're like, I think we should, you know, we haven't seen each other in a while. Let's turn our cameras on, and I was like, nope. It was like, I didn't do my hair. I was in my pajamas still. I was like, I mean, I'm still here, but you don't want to see my face.
Oh yeah, I'm in pajamas. So.
And I think we have a few more people that joined. Let's see. Oh, Yvette. I know Yvette. Yvette is a friend of mine who lives out here in New York as well. Who else has joined? Kinivagi. Kinivanagi. Sorry, where are you from?
Me? I'm from Hawaii.
Cool. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Oh, okay.
Someone else has just joined. Jeffrey, welcome.
Jeffrey, good to share space again, my brother. How are you?
His mic is off.
It's okay. He might be. I know lots of people are going to be coming on here listening. There's still some of them are still at work, but yeah, the chat is open. Karina, how's it going, sis? It's so good to see you. I feel like I see my people every day, and I'm so happy. Like, let's just be on Zoom our whole lives and figure out a way to just make this be a thing. I love it.
I have to say, not to get all corny and everything, but like as a Pacific Islander, Papua New Guinean that lives in New York and is so far away from home, like I love stuff like Zoom because you don't feel so far away from the people you love, and you can connect. So, yeah. Sorry, that's my corny spiel. I'll keep quiet now. Who else has joined? Oh, Melissa from Papua New Guinea. Melissa's my cousin. So I feel like this is gonna be a Zoom with like family and friends of friends.
Are your family from Papua? Are they do they live around like Port Moresby?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Is it kind of you kind of know everyone's family, or is it just it's too big for that? Of like last names and things.
That's my mom. I feel like my mom knows everybody. Like, and when I mean, growing up there, that's what it was like. Everybody knows everybody. But I think I've been away for over 20 years now, and it's definitely grown as a city. So I feel like it's definitely a bit different now. I've been back like 3 times, and just the pace and scale of which the city's grown. Like
3 times? What? Come on.
If I had all the money in the world, I would go, at least like 2 or 3 times a year. But, it's a long way and it's a lot of money.
Jeffrey, what do you think? Does everyone know everyone in Papua?
Only in Port Moresby area.
Of course. Hi, Ilona. My name's Jeffrey. I come from West Papua. And yes, indeed, everyone is your older brother, is your uncle, it's your, it's like that. And I guess it's not just in Papua. I guess it's also the same throughout the Pacific too. And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason why I asked is I was wondering, do you know Brendan Chan? DJ Dirty Fingers?
Everyone knows Brandon.
Okay.
I think we'll wait like another few minutes to let, a few more people join. But so I'll just let you know, Pauline, if that's okay, just like give a quick run through of like the agenda. And I say agenda, but it's not like super formal. Like, I'm in my sweatshirt and sweatpants, sitting on my couch. So I have a video which is like, it's 8 minutes, but it's really great because I think this video really kind of sets the scene for, what's been going on the last 4 years here in the US, and speaks to like why, and I will talk about this in the presentation, why I feel this election, and your vote is also a vote for climate action, and why this election is really important. So I'll start off with that video, and then I'll just run into like a quick, super quick, basic overview of like the science of climate change and how we ended up here, who the main polluters are, what gives me the right to talk about this, how I got into, climate change and where I work and what we do. And then the really fun stuff, talking about Joe Biden and Donald Trump and what their climate policies are and what their plans are, kind of linking climate change, like connecting the dots and all the other really important societal issues that we have, and kind of showing you how they're all connected to climate change. And then we can have like a discussion, because I really would like to hear from people about your thoughts on climate change. How important is this issue to you? What are your personal experiences with it? And I guess what's really important is what keeps you going, because this can be a very overwhelming issue and subject. And as Pacific Islanders, we're on the front lines of this issue. And it can be a very emotional subject. So, I mean, again, this is friends and friends of friends and family. So it's really important to like kind of, be open and talk about what keeps you going and what motivates you if, you're really involved in the climate space. So, that's it. Maybe a minute or two more.
Yeah, I like what you shared, Lona, because I feel like, a lot of inequalities are interlocking. And climate change is one of those things that is very interlocking in the way we participate in the spaces that we are currently living, whether we are living in the diaspora, where we are physically living in the region versus not living in the region, and we've migrated and have established homes in different parts of the world. And so I like the phrase "lift where you stand," and everybody being able to put forth their effort in the communities that they live in and lift our Pacific Moana voices wherever we live. And so, climate action, as well as I'm excited because we're going to discuss the disparities that exist within climate, being racial, social, health, and economics. And I think the racial part is a huge thing that is being dealt with within the Pacific. And I'm happy to have Jeffrey here because of his background of West Papua and how all this stuff contributes to, for climate action and how it will impact, possibly seeing West Papua free from Indonesia. So it's going to be really amazing to share space, share discussion and words with where we are all coming from, and possibly, like Lona, you said, the climate action, but creating a Moana climate action in which we are knowing what we're asking for from our political leaders, in hopes of what we want to see them do and commit to. So yeah, that's going to be great.
Awesome. Okay. I see one person who's connecting to audio. I'll just give them another minute so they can join. I feel bad starting a video because I am going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start screen share, and then I'll go into the video. So short film, I mean, it's 8 minutes, but it just Grist, who are the media company, just came out with this. They just dropped this video, and I thought this was a great video to start off with. So let me start.
Today is Donald Trump's first full day as the 45th president of the United States.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Thank you.
The voluntary global accord signed in 2015 by nearly 200 nations to cut greenhouse gases to slow the warming of our planet.
This morning, German Chancellor Angela Merkel called it extremely regrettable. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called it disheartening. And the Vatican went further, saying Mr. Trump's decision was a disaster for everyone.
Hurricane Irma,
Hurricane Harvey,
Hurricane Maria just came ashore in Puerto Rico.
Winds are ferocious right now, gusting above 120 miles per hour.
Thursday marks the end of hurricane season, and 2017 was by far the costliest on record.
You have warmer air, it can hold more moisture. We have more extreme rain events, and we're seeing that.
The Trump administration proposed new rules to roll back the miles per gallon or fuel efficiency standards on new cars and trucks sold in America.
Today, the Trump administration formally announced their plan to roll back President Obama's Clean Power Plan. The Clean Power Plan was designed to cut power plant fossil fuel emissions by a third.
The past administration made a commitment to declare a war on coal, and effectively yesterday and today, that war is over.
NASA said today that 2017 was the second hottest year on record since modern measurements began in 1880.
Cape Town, South Africa could become the world's first major city to run out of water.
The city has launched an aggressive campaign to avoid day zero, mandatory limits, 13 gallons per person per day.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the unprecedented report, concluding that the planet can't keep up with global warming. The consequences for nature and humanity are sweeping and severe.
The congressionally mandated National Climate Assessment was released on Friday. The report details the extreme dangers of climate change and the toll that human activity has played in speeding up the process.
I've seen it, I've read some of it, and it's fine. Yeah, I don't believe it. No, I don't believe it.
We have 12 years to radically transform every part of our economy and society to stop the climate crisis.
I just want to let you all know how proud I am of each and every single one of you.
2018 was the fourth hottest year since scientists began keeping records in 1880.
The solution is not going to come from just one congresswoman from the Bronx. It's not going to come just from one senator. It's going to come from all of our representatives as a country.
Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey introduced their Green New Deal at a press conference today.
The Green New Deal, getting a lot of pushback from Republicans.
Radical environmental socialism.
You're not allowed to own cows anymore.
Sounds more like a green nightmare to me.
After a year of devastating floods, wildfires, and hurricanes, climate change has been polling as a top issue in the 2020 Democratic primaries.
It is a monumental crisis.
People are being harmed by it. Countries are at risk of vanishing.
It is our moment to solve America's most daunting challenge.
We will build a clean energy economy.
We have to stop the thinking that clean energy and job creation don't go together. They do.
If we don't have the guts to take on the fossil fuel industry and tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And I got to tell you, according to the scientists, the world that we're going to be leaving our kids and our grandchildren is going to be increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable.
Now to the crisis in the Amazon, where fires are raging at a record rate.
This morning, one of the world's most important natural treasures in flames. Over 9,500 fires have broken out since last week.
These trees are crucial not just for how much carbon dioxide they absorb, but also for the role they play in cooling the planet.
We're seeing, I think, the first flickerings of the tipping point.
That will transform large sections of the jungle into a savanna.
I will tell you that we are a generation of scared people, but very ambitious, very united, very persistent, and very good at action.
Organizers of today's global climate strike are still tallying the number of people who took to the streets around the country and the world. Estimates are well into the millions.
Now, the goal of this strike, and really all these strikes around the world, is to send a clear message to world leaders ahead of the UN Climate Summit happening this week in New York.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
New findings show the world experienced another year of extreme weather in 2019. The last decade was the warmest on record.
People don't really understand it until you actually see it coming at you in a wall of flame.
200 fires in all, burning in Australia's two most heavily populated states. That's New South Wales and Victoria.
The coronavirus is spreading so quickly around the globe, it may only be a matter of time before it begins rolling across the U.S.
The number of cases in the U.S. jumped again overnight.
The fight against the virus has slowed down many economies at huge cost. But it's also done wonders for the air and for the carbon emissions that are heating up the planet.
But scientists are warning that this extreme reduction, as they call it, in greenhouse gas emissions is likely to be temporary.
We can either rebuild as it was, which is a huge mistake, or we can rebuild a more inclusive and a more sustainable economy and society. This is why we've been recommending to have massive investments in green technologies, in green industries, in green energy.
Blood orange skies and overwhelming smoke from wildfires had sadly become part of life for people here on the West Coast.
People in the Bay Area woke up to look at that orange and red skies, the smoke blocking the sun, some saying it feels apocalyptic.
It's a lot of disbelief that it's happening again 4 years in a row now.
Donald Trump visited California to offer support, and he offered some climate change denial as well.
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
We know the answer, and the answer is to move away from fossil fuels and start leaning on sustainable energy.
AT&T,
Amazon, Microsoft, Unilever.
Apple will be 100% carbon neutral.
So our ambition is to become a net zero company by 2050.
Its president promised China would be carbon neutral by 2060.
Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
All right. So I hope I didn't bore you guys to death with that. And welcome Alicia and whoever else joined while that video was going on. I thought that was a great video to kind of set the scene. And now I'll just jump into a really quick presentation where I can lay out some quick basic scientific facts on climate change, main polluters, again, what I do at C40 Cities, and then, laying out the climate policies and plans of the incumbent and the candidate in this very important presidential election that we have here in the US. So I shall share my screen again. And let me know if you can see the slides.
Yeah, you can see it.
Cool. Okay. So I'll go into slideshow. Okay. So really quick basic background on the science of climate change and the science of global warming. So basically this slide, the next few slides are about how we're emitting CO2 into the atmosphere and how we're heating up the climate. And this is the natural greenhouse gas effect, where basically our Earth has a natural layer, and the sun's energy comes into the Earth in the form of light and energy that warms up the planet. Some of that actually escapes by way of what is called infrared radiation. Some of that is also trapped in the atmosphere, and that becomes like the natural greenhouse effect, which is actually a good thing because that's what keeps the temperatures here on Earth in an ideal range for us as living beings to, that is suitable for the life forms here to evolve and survive. The basic problem now is that, sorry. What's happening now is that we're spewing over 100 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere. And as we pollute more and more of that, the CO2 concentration increases, more of what that infrared radiation that was supposed to go out into the atmosphere, into space, gets trapped. And so the Earth keeps heating up. And so the atmosphere absorbs all that extra CO2, as does the ocean. And I think that's really important for us to know as island people, and not only just Pacific Islanders, but coastal people as well. So where does all those, where do all those emissions come from? Which are the big polluters? And we can break that down into transportation, air transport, land transport, as well as sea transport. Fossil fuel production, whether it's oil production, coal mining, or coal plants, industrial processes, big industrial agriculture, whether you're clearing land and forest, for animal production or for farming and fertilizer, and also landfills. All of the waste and the garbage that we produce has to be taken somewhere, and all that garbage sits there. And as it rots, it turns it releases methane, and that's a fossil fuel, that's CO2, and that gets absorbed into the atmosphere. I think part of the vicious cycle, really important to know, is that thawing permafrost in the Arctic also contributes to more CO2, but that thawing permafrost is a result of the Earth heating up. So it's a sad, vicious cycle. It's really, this is all man-made. It's really important to acknowledge and realize that, and this is the really basic fundamental fact of climate change, is that our modern society, the way we, have created the world that we live in now, is based on, is powered by fossil fuels. But it's come at a heavy price. We haven't done things in a sustainable way, in a just way, and in a way that respects planet and people. So moving on from that, we're seeing that actually the burning of fossil fuels is the largest polluter, and just in 2018 alone, we burned about 100 billion tons of carbon, and that all gets released into the atmosphere. And we're now releasing more CO2 faster than at any other time in at least the last 66 million years. And, you know, that's how we end up with, you know, the very reality that we're living in now, whether we're here in the, you know, down here in the States, where we're seeing the West Coast on fire, we're seeing floods and hurricanes here in the Southeast, really horrible floods in the Midwest that really didn't get talked about a lot this year, that cost billions of dollars in damage in what is prime farmland. And, you know, all the farmers in the Midwest took a big economic hit. So we're seeing how all the effects of climate change are, you know, affecting not only, like, you know, through the wildfires out west, the air quality and health and safety of people, but, you know, our economy as well. And so that's what really, if I want to segue into what I do at C40 and why I feel, you know, I have some sway in like talking about this, is that's the bigger picture worldwide. And when we look at, you know, what people are doing around the world, you know, activists and organizations, what we do at C40 is we work on this issue at the city and the urban, from the urban lens. And that's really important because a large majority of people live in cities and urban areas. And by 2050, when we're going to be looking at, say, almost 10 billion people in the world, 3/4 of the Earth's population is going to be living in cities and urban areas. So it's really important to take a look at how cities are, you know, drivers of climate change, but how they can combat climate change and make, you know, the lives of their citizens, you know, healthier, more just, and more sustainable. So we are a network of 96 of the world's largest cities at C40. I work in the North America region for C40, where we kind of manage the Canadian and US cities. And so we're talking about, you know, LA, New York, Boston, New Orleans, San Francisco, Vancouver. We're also talking about all the global cities like Sydney, Jakarta, Bangkok, Lagos, Abidjan, Cape Town, Paris, London. So the biggest cities that represent, you know, at least 25% of the world's GDP. And 70% of our cities are already reporting that they're experiencing the effects of climate change. I mean, we have cities in Bangladesh. The entire, like a third of the entire country of Bangladesh was underwater a few weeks ago. So we provide support to our cities with research, technical experience, and helping our cities share the best practices to become more sustainable, to reduce their carbon emissions, and to be more connected, and, you know, to be much greener cities. Excuse me. So we help to accelerate action through, you know, technical support. We help, you know, our mayors remove barriers to climate action in their cities, whether it's, you know, through getting, you know, the right message out to their citizens, providing research for our cities. And through that, we also help to provide what is, you know, really global thought leadership on, you know, specifically the city and urban and climate space within climate change. And when I started working at C40, my boss also told me about the Climate Reality Leadership Corps. This is run by the former Vice President Al Gore, and it's really for anyone who wants to get out there and become, you know, a better driver of change, to learn how to engage with people who you may not really want to engage with, who you may think, you know, don't take this seriously or outright, you know, are hostile to science or climate change. And it helps you with not only learning about, you know, specific issues in certain areas, but it also helps you build up your skills to go out there and be a leader in your community. So I went through all of this, and, you know, with my professional background, I really, you know, thought that this election was really important to get out there and communicate with my, you know, connect with my, you know, community and talk about why this election, more than ever, is really about climate change. This really is a climate vote. And, you know, for those of us who follow politics here in the US or who reside here in the US, it's really having a candidate who has climate plans and a candidate who has just denied, and a current president who has just denied science outright and called climate change a hoax. And for, you know, those of us who in the US who may have watched the first presidential debate or may just want to forget about it, climate change, the specific topic of climate change wasn't on the, you know, issues to be talked about, to be discussed, to be debated that night. But Rolling Stone did a really great piece about why everything that was, you know, on the agenda was actually about climate change. So Supreme Court, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who just passed away, was actually among, you know, many of her legacies was, you know, support for environmental policies. We're now looking at having, you know, the nominee for the next, you know, to fill her seat, you know, at her hearing the other day, she said she, you know, has no views on climate change. She also has ties to the fossil fuel industry. And there's a good chance that, you know, this nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, will be, her nomination will go through and she will become the next justice, you know, on the Supreme Court. COVID-19, this is related to climate change because, you know, scientists have talked about how deforestation and habitat destruction, all these things that are, you know, bad for the environment are also give way to, you know, humans being in more closer contact with animals and just increasing, you know, the likelihood of transference of these, you know, diseases from, you know, animals to humans. The economy, we've been in lockdown for a while here in the US. Our economy has taken a big hit and we don't really have much of a policy from our, you know, our leaders right now and what their plans are, you know, to get back. At C40 Cities, we called for, you know, recovery plans that prioritize sustainability and environmental justice, because we've seen how this pandemic has put a lot of people who are already vulnerable, has made them even more vulnerable. And we've seen how, you know, it's really taken a hit on communities of color. And, you know, these communities are the ones that are also, you know, they're disproportionately impacted by climate change as well. You can't talk about climate change without, you know, and climate justice without talking about racial justice, especially here in the US. These things are connected. You know, low-income Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous communities are frontlines communities here in the United States, and we suffer more from the impacts of climate change than our more affluent and white counterparts. It's really also important to know that you cannot go in and pollute a community if you don't see them as a community, as a sacrifice zone, and if you don't, that's, you know, to some level, not see them as your equal. And then election integrity, you know, the compounding crises of COVID-19 and racial injustice are, you know, bringing this issue, you know, to the forefront. You know, past policies have worked to limit Black, Brown, and Indigenous people's access to the ballot box. And, you know, these are the same people that are standing to lose the most from climate change. So I will actually stop sharing right now so I can see everybody's faces, and I hope no one's like kind of zoned out before I go into talking about Trump and Biden and what their climate policies are. But before I go into that, just, you know, let me know if you have, you know, any, you know, comments, questions, and then we can move on. Or if you're just like, what the hell is she talking about?
Hey, Ilona, I love that you said the election is about climate change. Voting is about this. I mean, when we were talking about election, I would say overall elections in, I mean, New Zealand just finished having their elections. But I mean, as of right now in content, in what we're referring to as the United States election, when you talk about that, one of the things that I'm interested in is with Pacific Islanders, who I am here having discussions about climate change and how that is a big factor of how I'm voting this election. I mean, has really been a big factor in how I've always voted, but especially for this election, one of the argument that I'm constantly being faced with is, but I'm not for abortion, which is like challenging because I'm discussing like how, you know, I'm voting for my Moana community who are in the region, and how I'm hoping that this vote will influence like the person that we put into the power position will influence change and policies that that will impact our Pacific community. But then I get thrown in, but I just don't like where this candidate is standing on abortion. And so I'm wondering, when you're saying C40 helps to provide global leadership, I mean, do they have any way how to navigate through those types of conversation and bring and carve space for like the need to put climate change and view that as a priority versus, you know, just things that might distract that conversation?
Yeah. And see, that's the other thing. That's why I feel like all these talking points of like the GOP or like Republicans get like, they're amplified. And so it just becomes about that. That's the only thing you're, you know, you're voting for, like when you vote in this election. But I'm just going to be blunt. And we have to be blunt because this is climate change. If we don't solve climate change, nothing else matters, because climate change is about our very survival as a species on this planet. That's it. You know, for an organization like us, we're supporting mayors first and foremost, and you know what their priorities are for their cities, because I mean, like I said, most people live in cities. We're talking about a big chunk of the world's population. But that gets really, it gets really hard because people are very, you know, this is such a divisive topic, you know, it can get really nasty. But I mean, I think we try to really focus this discussion and this narrative around people's quality of life. What's really important? Breathing clean air and drinking, you know, clean water, being able to afford your electricity bills and having, you know, not spending 2 hours sitting on a train and then a bus to get to your job. You know, that's what it's about. I think really, if you looked at like the majority of people, their day-to-day issues are what's most important to them when they're thinking about voting. The abortion topic gets amplified out there because there are really good communications people working for these people that are just amplifying this. But if you go and talk to a person on the street, what is your bread and butter issue? I spend 3 hours getting to work. I have to take a bus, 2 trains, and then go work at this job and do that again in the evening. I can't afford this. You know, I got to struggle to put food on the table. Well, that's what climate change is about. It's about making sure we live in connected cities that are cleaner, where our people get paid, you know, a just amount and can afford to survive. That's what it's about. So I think it's really about reframing this issue and connecting it with the really, I think, the most important issues, which are people's bread and butter issues. I hope I wasn't like rambling, but that's what it is. So that, you know, basically at C40, the things that we work on are, you know, issues that are important to, you know, helping people live a just, healthy, sustainable life where, you know, you don't have to choose between, you know, like in this pandemic where we were seeing really the frontlines people who are really the people that I would call the maintainers of the city our garbage collectors, our nurses, the people who clean our streets, the people who run the the MTA, which is here in New York, like our bus drivers and the train conductors, the people who are responsible for you making sure you live in a city or a town that functions. Those are the people that are the most important people. So we work on these issues that make it more efficient and easier for all these people to do our jobs and to make the cities more connected, so we don't have to spend like 3 hours sitting in traffic and going to work, which, and so like, for example, LA is one of our biggest cities. There's also a housing crisis in LA. LA has, had bad air quality. Right, so how is that related to climate change in C40 cities? Well, if you're, making minimum wage and you don't live next to, and LA doesn't have great public transport, and you have to sit in traffic and drive hours to your job, and you can't afford to live in your neighborhood, that's climate and environmental justice, because you should be able to live in a city where your job is close to your home and you can like commute easily. And if you commute easily and you have like good sustainable transport, that helps the air quality. So there's like all these co-benefits of, how it impacts your wallet, how it impacts your health. Yeah, I hope that made sense. Okay.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for making time for this. Really, I don't think important is significant enough a word. Issue. I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional. I know for me, like I live in California. I can't vote. I choose not to be a citizen. But I do everything else because I know that this will be my nieces and nephews' home for the rest of their lives and all of their generations. However, so this is my priority issue. It's been for a long time. I will put my support behind the person who takes the most radical steps around climate justice. I think what's really been hard in communicating this with our community is because there has been so much messaging around livelihood or economy or, like capitalistic values that our community ingests and just stands on. And so I've been wondering for so long and been really hungry for space where we can have this dialogue about how do we strategize around messaging, around existence, right? Like, so existence and preservation beyond our generation. Because the hard truth is our islands could be gone, right? Like we're moving in that direction, right? And when that's gone, our identity is gone with it, right? It's going to be around for maybe another century, we hopefully, but when there's no place, there's no identity. So I'm not asking for an answer here, but I would really love for a space to talk about strategies that we can develop to both look at how we message this for our own community while also developing policy strategies, because as people that live in this country, in the most powerful country in the world that is doing nothing globally to address this issue, we can have some say in who we vote for, how much we show up behind policies, whether it's at the local level with our mayors who are doing a lot more than the federal level leadership, or at the federal level. And it would just be great to have a dialogue that leads to those kinds of outcomes so that we can use it to push policies or take stances behind policies. Because I know we talk about climate change being an issue, but we have not moved to action beyond, decreasing plastic usage and driving less and those kinds of we need to shift systems and contribute to systems change rather than just thinking that we can only just do individual things. So I'm just really grateful that you're here. Thank you, Pauline, for creating this space. This is the issue that I'm most powerful about because it also intersects with everything else. And so I would love to continue this conversation towards some solid, tangible outcomes that we can use in the near future, not too far off in the future. So thank you. I just wanted to say that.
No, no, that was great. Thank you for that. That was so important because I think, sorry, I kind of like, no, I forgot what I was going to say, but there are, I think when we talk about climate change and making a change, I think really the first step, like how I've always thought about it, is changing your mindset, creating a climate of change, really looking and recognizing how it is that we got here in the first place. And we can take that all the way back to colonialism, because really that's how it started. And us as Indigenous people, if we want to talk about, so like, you know, we may be Pacifica people residing here on like Turtle Island. When we talk about colonization here in the US, it started because there were people from Europe who used this doctrine of discovery, which basically said anybody who isn't white and Christian is less than. So this gives you permission to go into their land and extract and treat them however you want to treat them. And that's what happened. That's how that's how our country was founded, right? On genocide of Indigenous people and stolen labor and still extracting from Indigenous land today. So, and you know, they did it here, they've done it in the Pacific, where we come from. So just recognizing that at the minimum is super important. You have to understand the root of the problem and how it connects to everything else today. That's why, I mean, look at our housing policies and why, you know, Black and brown people live in communities where, you know, they live in urban heat islands, you know, where it's hotter for them, you know, when they have heat waves, they're more affected than affluent white people. Well, there are housing policies put in place, redlining, where Black and brown people couldn't get home loans. And that was a way to separate us, you know, the white suburbs from, you know, Black and brown people. And who had all the parks and the trees and the big lawns in their yards? The whiter neighborhoods, right? And even today, even in New York City, you know, the Black and brown neighborhoods, there are less parks and open green spaces in Black neighborhoods than there are in white neighborhoods. That's how it was. That's how our cities were designed. And so when you talk about climate change and climate justice, it's addressing those issues. And so, you know, when you look at our, you know, the candidates, you better look for, you know, I'm looking to see if one, at the minimum, address climate change. It's not a hoax. Science and data, this is fact. But also, you know, address environmental and climate justice.
Can I ask a question? Having talked about islands and colonization, Lorna, earlier you mentioned about the cause of the climate change is because of the man-made, like, you know, mining and the planes fly here and there and all that stuff. I believe in science too, but my question is, I just wanted to hear your opinion. What do you think, like, when you said man-made, does that mean that we can still have, you know, all these things like mining and all this stuff, planes and all that, and maybe it means that we just have to look at different way to handle this climate change, and having talk about colonizations, like in the islands, like for example, in Papua New Guinea, as everyone might know, they have the biggest gold mine in the world, and not just in Papua New Guinea, as well as in West Papua, and also in Kanaki, New Caledonia, the biggest nickel, but that's technically owned by France, and all these things. But to me it sounds like basically these colonials sort of trying, just telling us what to do, like indigenous, what to. Just sounds to me like, oh, okay, now it's okay for you to have mine. Like if you get independent, like now you're a free country, like, okay, it's okay to have mine. And they're like, oh, sorry, mining and all this, bad for environment. You cannot have mine anymore. And we have to be environmentally so my question is more, does that, is this means there is actually another way to tackle this? If that makes sense.
I absolutely get what you're saying, and I think in that video where they started talking about the Green New Deal, and they had that snippet of President Trump saying, "Oh, we can't own cows." No, it's not about not owning cows and not being able to fly anymore. It's about finding the most efficient, sustainable, and just ways to do these things. Because I like beef. I like my burgers. I like flying. I can't get back to Papua New Guinea to see my family without flying. This is the world we live in, and it's a much better world than before. There are all these technical advances which are great, but the way we're doing things now is not sustainable. Like, if you just think about it, if we go in and you see all these indigenous communities down in South America, or just, for example, I'll talk about what happened in North Dakota with the pipeline, right? There is a better way of providing energy than going into a community, polluting that community, just having total disregard for indigenous rights and treaty rights. It's kind of just like bullying your way through to get things done, and polluting a community in the process. And then when you're done, just walking away and not taking, responsibility for the effects of the way you've done things. We are going to still need to mine, because if we're talking about solar panels need batteries, and the batteries come from, we need, to mine lithium for the batteries. But it's about making sure that the whole process and the whole chain of things is done better, more efficiently. We shouldn't have to rely on source of energy where people actually had to go to war for it. Look at oil. The United States, we go to war, fight over oil, or just look at what happens on out here. For example, in where there is where they set up what's the word? Oil production and fracking and natural gas in some of these indigenous areas out here. And so they have to bring in the workers, which are close to native land. And you have all these people that come from outside, and they have what they call man camps, where, the men who work in these oil fields work. And there's a correlation between the setup of these, these projects and sexual violence and missing and murdered indigenous women. It's really just about making sure that we're doing things where we respect human rights, where we respect the environment, and the local people that we're extracting from, they should have a say in it. They should benefit from it. look at every like mining or, you know, oil venture in the world that is, you know, on, you know, local people's land. People benefited the most. Definitely not the local people. It's the big multinational corporations that are making more money. And like, for example, in Papua New Guinea, where, you know, you mine and mine and mine and mine. And that's basically what our economy is based on. We just, everything is based on mining. But, you know, it's the mining companies that have made the money and certain politicians, but we still have a long way to go in terms of providing, you know, services and infrastructure for our people. We've been left behind. So we know what we're doing wrong. We have to do it better.
Yeah, thank you, 100%. And I'm asking you these questions because this year we just had Bougainville. They just had their referendum, and we know that in Bougainville, they also there's a big gold company up there, and as well as in Kanaki as well, and so France known as France known as the biggest contributor to nickel in the world. But that nickel, it's actually come from the new Kanaki, right? And then, and I mean, these island countries are about to get their independence, but then, and you know, I was just thinking like, man, it's so cool they're about to get independent, but all this, you know, nickel, gold, copper, we cannot, it will be a challenge for us. We have to think another way how we can enjoy that. So I'm just like sort of trying to, thinking of like, is there another way to enjoy that? Like rather than stop all this mining and this and like think, that's why,
No,
anyway,
I mean, that's the reality of the world we live in, is that we can't have this modern and advanced technology that we, you know, modern world, technologically advanced world that we live in without basically everything that, you know, the modern world we live in is based on, you know, resources that we extract from the natural world. But I mean, up until now, we haven't been doing it sustainably. So that's what it really comes down to. And also empowering the people that we are extracting from. They should be the ones who are at the forefront, you know, directing things how are going, you know, how, you know, directing things, you know, along the way. It's just from the Papua New Guinean perspective, the government got rich, the mining companies got rich, but the villages were polluted. It should be the other way around. We should end up with, you know, the people gaining economically and also, you know, with infrastructure and schools and, you know, advancing their development. You know, it can be done. We know it can be done. Like everything else when it comes to this issue, it's about political will. You know, we choose what we want to invest in and do right and do properly. You know, yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, like, my question's more like, you know, from the islands who are still living under colonization, like, you know, in New Caledonia, Kanaki, and even West Papua also, and as well as Bougainville. That was my question kind of coming from, like, but thank you for your input.
It would be interesting to see. I mean, the only island I had ever read about benefiting at a small time period was Nauru, in which they had, at one point, they became one of the wealthiest nation and everybody seriously were living like super wealthy. The only thing was the lack of being able to sustain that type of export, in which they were exporting, was it their soil? Wasn't it their soil?
I think
potassium.
But yeah,
potassium.
yeah, phosphate.
It was due from like the seagulls, pretty much.
And that all goes to fertilizer.
Yeah, for fertilizer, and like that I mean, they weren't benefiting at the very beginning, but towards the end when Australia as well as all the other governments were involved, they eventually had to get out of the island, but the islanders were able to still keep like that business going. But I just wondered, how would that have worked? Like, how will this work, and how will our islands continue to, like, if Jeffrey is asking, how does our island continue to have access to the way white nations have access to their natural resources and continue to keep that money flow without being taken advantage of and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that would be so interesting, but it would be so great to see our island nations who have these resources be able to reap the benefits from their land.
No, and it's also about, it's about how we revalue, like, first of all, having competent and leaders that are not corrupt and in it for themselves, and who have a vision of, like, not about just making money today and profiting off of this mine, but the money that we make today off of this mine, we can invest in the future. Because we, like for Nauru, we know we're going to run out of phosphate. We made a lot of money. How do we invest that to sustain Nauru as a nation and as a people in the future? Incompetent leadership and corruption is really what has hindered us, that are resource rich, but, poor according to, like the Western world. You can, like I said, again, there are certain things where we're going to need to mine, but it's the whole process of who's involved and renegotiating, these contracts, and making sure that, the local people are the ones that benefit the most. So that means increasing their agency and their voice, and not just leaving it to like a corrupt mining minister, to speak on their behalf. It's a tough one, but it really comes down to having good leadership and really strong local voices. Because really, as we've seen in Papua New Guinea and elsewhere in the Pacific, it's poor and corrupt leadership that, squanders all the resources that we have.
Yeah, 100%. I've always think of this, we have gold, we have nickel, and actually like what we are using now, computer, it's actually made out of that. So technically, we own the world. Sorry, I just got really excited. Man, that's so cool. But anyway.
No, it's great to see everybody like really passionate about this, because we have to be passionate about this. But just to kind of, I guess, bring it back and connect with, what's really important, what's going on here in the US specifically, and what's going to happen in a few weeks, is that we have, on one hand, a president who's running for re-election, who really has no climate plan, has just rolled back all these environmental policies, and has really strong ties to the fossil fuel industry. And come on, he doesn't believe in the science, and he's called it a hoax. And then you have, Biden, who, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for C40 or anyone. But, I don't agree with everything that, he says or has done, but it's about who you can work with, who you can cooperate with, who you're surrounding yourself with. And the fact that he is being advised on his climate policies by, people like Bernie Sanders, by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Deb Haaland, who was one of the first 2 Native American women to be elected into Congress, representation. So that to me is really important. And it's about who has the best policies for this really crucial issue. And I'll try and leave it at that in terms of the, US election, because like I said, and I've seen from the comments here that people were like, yeah, I didn't want to watch that, debate. But yeah. So anyone else that has any questions, comments, feelings?
Marlo,
Sorry.
sorry.
Go.
No, you go, Jeffrey.
No, I'm just curious. Lona, have you ever done any work in directly to the community in the islands or C40? Have they? And what was the experience, and what, if you
Yeah,
share with us?
I haven't. I mean, C40. The thing about C40 is that it's a network of the largest cities, with the largest populations. So we don't have, we don't have any Pacific Island, cities represented because we're just too small. Really, the closest I've come to working, because I grew up here, but I worked for the Fiji mission to the United Nations for 5 years, and that's really where I started learning about sustainability and climate change and how it affects the Pacific Islands. And actually, really importantly, that's where I really saw leadership. And I was kind of wanted to, segue into this and talk about how, as Pacific Islanders, if we want to talk about how this issue can really bring you down, because it's such a heavy topic sometimes. And for me, what I find solace in is the leadership of not only certain Pacific Island countries and leaders, but Pacific Islanders in general. Pacific climate warriors and people like Kathy Kitchener, like Pacific Island youth who are out here, raising their voices. It's really important for everybody to understand that we may be small islands, and so like we don't have large economies, we're not like big political players, we're literally the front lines of climate change, but we're showing up and we're leading. So I think when you feel down about this issue, I think you just have to look at your community. And exactly, I said that we're fighting, we're not drowning. And that's like what, honestly, the past 4 years as an American, when you see how, the things that have been going on in terms of climate impact and our political leadership, I find solace, and I really find, just the will to go on from what, people like, the former president of the Marshall Islands did, Fiji's leadership in, the climate negotiations, people like the former prime minister of Tuvalu, the former president of Kiribati, like all our Pacific climate warriors who get out there and, are marching in the front of those big climate marches. That's what you should be proud of. And I think it's really important to understand that we have to be vocal and we have to be educated on this issue as Pacific Islanders, whether we're Pacific Islander Americans or in our home islands or in Australia or New Zealand. It matters, and we have to be educated on this because we have the most to lose. So we have no choice but to lead on this.
Thank you so much for the discussion. I just wanted to say that just from here in New Zealand and watching the US elections, I know that we've always been interested in the US elections because we know that it has such a massive impact on geopolitics and our world in general. But I also just really wanted to tautoko, or sorry, in Māori that just means support, what Ilona was saying, and just about how like we're drowning and we're not fighting. So we're not drowning, we're fighting. Sorry. So I'm Samoan Tuvaluan, and like Tuvalu is one of those islands where, we've seen for a long time that, the sea levels are really rising, and there might be a chance that our whenua will be lost. So it's such an important topic, and I really want to encourage all of us, because I know that, just as Ilona said, that this topic is really, really tough and really overwhelming. Sometimes, like, especially when I was just watching that video before, it was just like, man, so much, massive corporations, like, our world is pretty much built on capitalism and that kind of thing. But I guess together we can all really produce solutions that will actually bring about change. And I think, just as Alicia was saying and as Pauline was saying, I think it would be really cool if we can continue not only the discussion, but see how we can make that change within our own communities, for our home islands, and how we can do little things, and together that will create a ripple effect and really move our oceans forward. So yeah, I just wanted to tautoko, and I just wanted to say I'm so grateful to be in the space with you all. I love it.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in really quick. I'm in little landlocked Arizona, and I was born here in the States, but having this discussion hosted by Pauline and having you here, Ilona, as well, it's given me, a Pacific Island in the diaspora, more courage to keep participating locally and at the federal level as well. Like, I might not be able to march in the islands and be with people there, but the choices that we make here in the States have such a big impact, as we've already discussed. And to know that I can keep encouraging and helping to educate people here in my communities. I know we have a very big Indigenous population here. We're on Tohono O'odham land here in Tucson, and we have a candidate running in our local elections for, sorry, that's my baby, for the Pima County Recorder, and she's had an amazing level of support. And so it's been encouraging to see people of color, but also just our white allies recognizing what they're participating in and how they can change their choices as well. And so it just gives me hope that with the way that we vote this election, we have more power to make real change. Even if we do feel that our changes are small, they're still very important. And that's what we can do to give back to Moana as a whole, even if we don't live on the islands.
I don't know. Thank you for sharing. I think also, before I forget, another thing that's really important to remember is that carbon emissions don't respect borders or boundaries. So what happens here in our policies and things we do here in the United States impact our people back home in the islands.
Lona, I just wonder, just because I'm thinking of what Alicia shared, how do we put this in a way that defines the urgency of climate change, not only for, I feel like millennials and Gen Zers get that within the Pacific diaspora. I think a lot of people who have a huge say with, and who have who sit in position of power within the Pacific community are not us, though. A lot of power decision makers come from people who are our parents. And so as I'm thinking here, how do you strategize from what Alicia was saying, in which you display this information to that generation? Because like you said, if we don't take care of climate change, none of the other issues matter, in which a lot of those issues always distract and take away and push away climate change. And I can only think of one of the things that sits on my mind about strategizing and being able to put this message out there towards pretty much everybody is putting it in a form of education, not in a matter of where you're educating somebody, but more of like, it's an esteemed form of knowledge to obtain this. I just see a lot of families do so much sacrifices for their kids to go to school, to get an education, and parents jumping behind that wagon to support those children. And I can only imagine that being the situation if we can figure out the way we have been pushed education, gaining some type of degree, becoming a doctor or a lawyer of that sort, but pushing that type of narration with obtaining knowledge in regards to climate change. But I don't know how that would look like, of how you would market that. But and I almost hate marketing, because I like the word marketing, because it feels like you're trying to sell people on something, and that's the last thing we want our Moana people to feel, like we're trying to sell them, because really we just want to protect them. And I wish that's what our community could see, that this is a cry for protection, and not only protecting our people, but protecting our physical lands in of itself.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about, like, it's kind of like when you think about converting people to the climate side, right? Um, and bridging that intergenerational gap, the whole thing with like respecting our elders and, the rules that they set for us and all of that. I think at the minimum, really at the basic level, it's just saying, if you value us as the next generation, you should value this issue, because this is the earth that we're going to inherit. What are you leaving us for our future? And at the moment, it's not much. It's not kind, it's not just, it's not healthy. That would be like my most basic thing that I bring to the table. That's what I hope we'll just like reach in and just like grab him and pull him in. And then I'll come with everything else. But that's basically what it is. This issue at its core is, just the basic issue of like survival and, quality of life. And for the young kids today, they're not going to have it, it's shaping up that they're not going to have the best quality of life. So their parents and their grandparents should be thinking about that, what they're leaving and passing down to the next generation.
I think that's a really great reflection. One of the hardest to move portion of our population are some of our elders, but we also know that if we can move them, then that trickles down. And if they can come down and meet the rest of the younger generation halfway, it might be a great movement to build upon. I think some of the most emotional conversations, especially with elders, is when they're reminiscing about their childhood in the islands. And I think if we can frame around a messaging around those memories that they have, and it not being part of the next generations, like anything, not even a memory, I think it could be powerful to build around. But yeah, I think, thinking about those things, the kind of lives that they led will never be anything that would be true if we're not doing anything about it today. I would love that.
Yeah. No, it's really putting out there, what we hold dear to us and what is really valuable to us. And that's like our culture and our land and all that history. And that's what's at stake. Like all those things that you loved and you enjoyed and you got to experience in the homeland may not be there for your grandkids. And that's what you're fighting for. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way of, bridging that generational gap. Anyone else? Questions, comments, and then we can If it's okay with you to wrap up and then go enjoy breakfast or dinner.
Just interested when you said, like the last thing when you said, that's what we are fighting for. Do you mean fighting for, like, who are we fighting? Like, like, who should we fighting? Like, what should we do? Like, sorry. The question here, there in my brain, but I'm just trying to make it.
Who should we be fighting for, or what are we fighting for?
Yeah, I want what are you saying that? Oh yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that again? Who are we? Oh, don't worry. Are you saying that we have to like fight these big corporation companies to all this, to stopping operating anymore? Or are you saying that fighting to get the young generation to just fight as in to learn the knowledge about what our ancestors, how they live with the land back in the day? What?
I mean, I think it's all of that. It's called multitasking. I think you can, walk and chew gum at the same time. It's, we should be learning about this issue and focusing in on like what you have the time for and are most passionate about within the issue of climate change. So if it's, holding multinational corporations accountable for what they're doing in your home island, focus on that. If it's connecting this issue with your elders, focus on that. I know nobody has the time to like fight all these things, at once, but that's where you gain the knowledge on this issue, and then you like zero in on, what you think you have the most power over. I'm just going to share my email if anybody wants to get in touch. Follow me on Instagram. So I'm just putting it here now so I don't forget.
And then I just wanted to let you know, Alicia said she is planning a town hall. And if you'd be open, I mean, that's something you guys can talk about in the emails, but just didn't know if you saw that comment. But then also wanting to say if there is enough people who are wanting to possibly do this bi-monthly, in which we can hold space, hold accountability, strategize more about, climate change. That's something we definitely can put together, and in hopes to, just moving things along, because sometimes we come from Zooms and we're like, okay, I did my part. It's like there's more to doing work within climate change. And one of the things that we paid tribute and acknowledge were the people within New Zealand who are, the youth over there just doing amazing work. And it is possibly due to the representation that New Zealand has. But I feel like the more we organize, the more we will see representation within our own spaces and how close they are. And there are actual Pacific communities within the States where you can go down a whole neighborhood and it will be, your neighbor will be Pacific Islander, your council person could be Pacific Islander. And I know in the state of Utah, I actually do not live in one of those communities, but have seen those communities here, and we have great leaders there too. So it would be nice to see what we can do. I can put out like an IG group and we can kind of converse there and add people who would like to be part of this, maybe bi-monthly thing, or we can, I don't know, whatever works, we'll figure out a time. But Ilona, we would love to continue to have your knowledge in this space, because seriously, why recreate the wheel when someone's already at the wheel holding space and directing, you know, traffic? So we definitely need you. So I'll meet up with you in regards to what we can do and what your schedule looks like, because I know you are so busy.
No, I love that idea. I think even just holding space, you know, whenever we can, just to, you know, connect and arm ourselves with knowledge is the best way to strategize and mobilize, because then you're armed with that knowledge to go out and like make change in your community. Awesome. Yeah, email me, reach out on you know, Instagram. I'm here. I like expanding my Pacifica network. You know, it's lonely out here in New York. Not much of a big Pacifica community out here, so you know, it's great to connect.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to send you an email. Sorry, I didn't mean to plug my event, but it was kind of thrown on me last minute. But I'm part of I'm helping out with Pacifica Vote. And so we want to do an issues town hall that is really talking about the issues impacting us the most. And then tying it to relevant California propositions. But I don't think that, I don't have anybody to talk about climate justice, because I didn't want it to be just like a surface conversation. So I got super lucky, thank you, Pauline, to end up here and to meet you, because it's this depth that we need about this conversation. It can't continue to be a surface conversation. And even though you live in New York, we don't have any climate specific things on the ballot here in California, but that doesn't matter. Everything's tied to climate anyways. So it'd be great if you have time, but I'll email you about it.
Oh no, definitely. I'm up for it. Always good to connect. And I don't know, maybe for the next conversation, Pauline, it would be after like everything, this experience here tonight, I think it would be really good for us to like discuss the issue of like seeing more Pacific representation in like organizations like mine. Because I really feel, from my experience, this is a great organization to work for, but there's two spaces in the environmental world. There's like the elite, you know, organizations that are funded by really rich white people, and that's great. Give us your money so we can do good things with it. But then there's the grassroots community and the people who are on the front lines every day, and we need to connect those two spaces, and we need more people that look like us in those, you know, like glitzy, you know, organizations that get most of the money and get most of the notoriety. That's how we truly make change. If like the people making the change are the people who come from and look like the people in their community, and bringing our experience to those, you know, like really elite organizations where those people may not know or have experience of what it's like to live in frontlines communities. So, you know, I'd be more excited to see young Pacifica people, you know, everywhere, you know, being interested in this, and, you know, in terms of careers, you know, looking at organizations like ours.
You know, maybe to just take those young Pacifica to somewhere like in Tuvalu, or, you know, and they can experience what it's like. Like, you know, I remember my uncle were in Tuvalu for the Pacific Island Leaders Forum, and he took a video when he was in the main road. And what's scary is that the main road is not that big, but then over here, like on your left, there's massive ocean. On your right, also massive ocean. So it's just like in a matter of seconds, like when the big wave came, it just can, I don't know, just, yeah, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, you know, just, you know, get all these young ones out in the Pacific, and
maybe this will be the like, because I don't want to drag this on too long and like keep you guys here, but the one thing that I think that I'm always saying to people, especially the people that I work with, like they're great, my white colleagues, is that like I feel like all these big international meetings on climate change where, you know, people show up in their really expensive suits and they're really highly paid, you know, people in this space, and they go to places like Paris or wherever to have these meetings. I think we should have meetings in the Pacific Islands where you experience this thing and you are uncomfortable, because this issue is very uncomfortable for our people who are on the front lines. So you should, when you're, you know, when you're those decision makers and those people with the money in the global north who hold the power, you should come and experience what it's like for us in the global south. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it here. So over to you, Pauline.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping we can do more of this. I'm hoping we can, that this space becomes more of an action-based space, because it's not like any other spaces where you don't really have to do something. When you learn about climate impacts, you realize how you are a player in the game and how you have to participate in this, or else it just gets worse, not only for yourself, but for the community and the families we come from. And so it would be nice to even see younger kids get involved. And so to allow the youth to be part of this group, which is something that, you know, the space is definitely open for. And so hopefully our next meeting we can have, you know, younger people as well as older people. So if your mom and dad are able to attend and they figure out how to do Zoom, invite them to come as well. So, but thank you again, Lona. Thank you so much for taking your time, and thank each of you for coming. If you dropped your name in the IG chat, I already added you to a group. If there's anything that you see throughout the week or a day about like a meme or some video, feel free to post that in the chat just to keep us all aware and motivated to keep doing the work regarding climate change and keep voicing our opinions. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you. Bye.
Thank you, Ilona.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lona, thank you so much. That was a wonderful meeting. I know that a lot of people weren't able to come on, but they were hoping to see like the work that you do and everything. Will you be posting that, or is there any way that I can have access to possibly take out some of the highlights out of this Zoom and post it to the vision board?
Yeah, I'm recording this.
Okay.
And then I'll share it with you. And then I can also like maybe do up my slides a little bit more, and then I can share my slides with you as well.
Yeah, so many people were wanting those slides in the chat too. So they were hoping to get that.
And I have a list of like resources where you can go for good information. I'll send that all to you.
Okay, cool. But yeah, even if you want to just put it all in the Google, like a Google Doc or something like that, and then I can just, that way you don't have to try to download it and put it everywhere. So I can just get it that way, but I'll DM you my email address.
Cool, definitely.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye, guys.
Bye.